Kugo Ginjo is one of the most underrated characters in the Bleach verse, and surprisingly I've seen so few people scale him considering the fact that he was the main villain in the Lost Agent arc. Because of this, most people fail to realize that end of series Ginjo is actually one of the strongest characters in the verse, and I have him casually placing among the top 10 strongest characters in Bleach as we know it. So in this video I'll be going through Ginjo's feats and scaling to show you guys why he fares so well among the high tiers in the verse, and also I'll be analyzing his narrative. With that being said, make sure to like, comment, subscribe for more videos like this, and let's get on with it. In order to truly understand how strong Ginjo was in the Fullbring arc, we have to understand what his goals were and why he was trying to accomplish the goals in the first place. And in order to find that out, we have to take a look at this guy called Tokinada Tsuneyashiro. The Tsuneyashiro family, like the Kuchiki and Shion family, is part of the 5 great noble houses engraved in the history of the Soul Society. Just like how each house's bloodline is filled with people with similar traits, so does the Tsuneyashiro family. They have been just some evil and conniving people since their first ancestor. Staying true to character, this family started a plan to forcibly acquire the corpses of Fullbringers to extract the soaking fragments within them. Ginjo was a Fullbringer and the first substitute Shinigami, and he was given a substitute Shinigami badge by Ukitake. Tokinada, who was a part of the plan made by his family, placed the surveillance on Ginjo's badge. Ukitake was against placing surveillance on the badge, but his objections were rejected by the Tsuneyashiro family, who then went on to kill Ginjo's Fullbringer friends. This caused Ginjo to retaliate by killing those same Shinigami assassins. Imagine, Ginjo and the others were surrounded by the very Shinigami he thought he could trust, and his Fullbringer's friends were being mutilated in front of him because there was surveillance within the badge, and the badge had been restricting his power. He fights them to death and kills the Shinigami assassins and takes their Shinigami power. He then disappears from the Soul Society, filled to the brim with rage and confusion from being deceived by the Soul Society and Jushiro Ukitake, the one who gave him the Shinigami badge in the first place. In the Soul Society, Tokinada deceived Ukitake into believing Ginjo killed his comrades as well as the Shinigami because he was enraged by the surveillance within the Shinigami badge, and this leads us to the plot of the Fullbringer arc. Within the world of the living, Ginjo saved multiple Fullbringers who were excluded because of their powers for various reasons into a secret organization called Execution. The Fullbringers within the organization promised to share their power with one another and pledged their allegiance to Ginjo. A bit over a year after Ichigo lost his powers after fighting Aizen, Ginjo decided to go after him to take his latent Shinigami and Fullbring powers in order to strengthen himself and other Fullbringers. From there, you guys know the rest of the story. A majority of the Fullbringer arc was focused on Ginjo training Ichigo in order to awaken his Fullbringer powers, which would thereby awaken his Shinigami powers. The major question now is, how strong did they think Ichigo was going to be after gaining his powers back? After analyzing the narrative, the portrayal of power, and what is most logically consistent with the story, I've come up with a scale of how strong each variant of Ichigo should most likely be after regaining his power. The level of power I think they thought Ichigo would achieve would be this variant of Ichigo, and due to the combination of his Fullbring powers, his full strength would be close to or even above full Holomask Ichigo. The reason why I say this is because obviously Ginjo and the other Fullbringers had a way to know how strong Ichigo was in the Battle of Fake Karakura Town, due to them actually being there physically or them watching through surveillance by Yukio's ability or something. But what people fail to realize is that they would most likely have no way of knowing or seeing how strong Dangai Ichigo became when he fought Aizen, because that fight took place within the Soul Society. Now, some people might make the argument that Tsukishima would know how strong Dangai Ichigo was because he was able to insert himself into the past of Orihime and Chad and make it seem like he helped Ichigo fight Aizen, and Tsukishima gains complete knowledge of people's past after slicing them with the Book of the End. But that would have only happened after he sliced Orihime and Chad, which was way after Ginjo and the others even made the plan of taking Ichigo's power. And this makes sense because this Ichigo is already on the level or even stronger than a baseline captain with only 1/3 of his power, and with the Holomask he would have been tens of times stronger than a baseline captain. Ginjo and the others would absorb this power and each gain at bare minimum a captain level amp of Ryatsu. This is all consistent with the level of power and feats shown within the arc. Now let's talk about how strong base Ginjo would be. Base Ginjo was able to contest Tsukishima. This same Tsukishima went on to fight a completed version of Fullbringer Ichigo. Now from the beginning, this Ichigo is mentally nerfed because, as you all know, emotions play a big part in how strong a Shinigami is. As soon as he activated the form, he blitzed Tsukishima twice and sliced his arm off before getting even more mentally nerfed due to Chad and Orihime being on Tsukishima's side. They clash, Ichigo kicks him down and fires a Getsuga Tensho, which Tsukishima was able to deflect with little damage. He then goes on to say that Ichigo succeeded in fusing the powers of a Soul Reaper and Fullbringer. If you were to make the argument that Tsukishima is low end relative to this Ichigo, be my guest, but I disagree. We never got to see the full power of this Ichigo due to him being mentally nerfed. Tsukishima had the help of both Chad and Orihime, and the times we do see them interact, Ichigo is dominating him for a majority of the fight. Tsukishima goes on to fight on par with TLA Byakuya, who through training should be stronger than his FKT variant, which fought Yami with Kenpachi, and then Byakuya goes on to fight as Note. So you can make the argument that base Genjo is stronger than most of the Espada because of that. Of course, Genjo goes on to absorb Ichigo's Fullbring powers and his Soul Reaper powers combined with it, leaving him in ultimate despair after completing his goal. Rukia comes to stab him in the back, which gives Ichigo his Soul Reaper powers back. And in the novel, The Death Saved the Strawberry, we learned that Kisuke spent a year to come up with a way to get Ichigo his Soul Reaper powers back. When he did, Kisuke gave the sword to Rukia, and she, along with everyone in the Soul Society, put in the Ryatsu to help Ichigo gain his Soul Reaper powers back, by stacking layers upon layers of the Ryatsu, with Rukia being the last one to put hers in. As stated, his power level after the transfer will be proportional to the amount of spiritual pressure inputted, so the more Ryatsu they inputted, the stronger he would be. This begs the question, how strong did the Shinigami think Ichigo was? Obviously, disregarding Mugetsu, Dangai Ichigo was the strongest variant of Ichigo before he lost his powers. So logically, they would all be trying to get Ichigo to that level of power. Well, the argument can be made that they wouldn't even know how strong that Ichigo was because they wouldn't even be able to sense his power. The counter argument to this would be that Kisuke and Mayuri, two of the smartest people in the verse, would obviously come up with ways to analyze that level of transcendent Ryatsu, as seen in Thousand Blood War when Mayuri was able to create technology strong enough to seal and restrict Aizen's Ryatsu. While Mayuri wasn't involved with the transfer and actually wanted to stop it, Kisuke was. So that must mean I think Fullbring Shikai Ichigo is as strong as Nangai Ichigo then. No. While I do think they would be trying to get Ichigo close to that level of power, I don't think they would be able to, because at that point Ichigo is a transcendent being, a character in a higher dimension than one who transcends both Shinigami and Hollow, a character who can replace the Soul King as the linchpin of the multiverse. So I think what most consistently aligns with the narrative of this version of Ichigo is that this version of Ichigo is significantly stronger than Hollow Mask Bankai Ichigo, but not as strong as the Dangai version of Ichigo, and not on the verge of transcendence level. This also shows that Genjo didn't have the correct understanding of how strong Ichigo actually was, because he thought he absorbed the entirety of his Shinigami powers, but as Rukia explains to him, all he did was skim the top layer of Ichigo's Soul Reaper powers that combined with his Fullbring. Ichigo fires a gust of Ryatsu at Genjo, which Genjo mistakes for an actual Getsuga Tensho, and then Ichigo fires another Getsuga Tensho that Genjo was able to cancel out due to absorbing Ichigo's power, which he states would have killed him otherwise. He then shares some of the power he absorbed from Ichigo with the other Fullbringers, and the fight continues. Genjo is capable of slicing through Ichigo's Getsuga Tensho, firing Getsuga Tenshos on his own that is able to damage Ichigo, canceling out Ichigo's Getsuga Tenshos with his own, and overall being equal to this Ichigo during the fight. So it's pretty clear that Imp Genjo is on par with Fullbring Shikai Ichigo. This Genjo should also be stronger than Yukio, who is able to create a dimension with celestial bodies within it, like the sun and also a moon. These solar system levels of power are entirely consistent when you consider the fact that around 180 Keto Corp members were able to charge the Keto Cannon, which was able to destroy the Valley of Screams, which consists of a planet and a sun. Additionally, the entire dimension was gravitationally pulling two universal-sized dimensions, which can potentially generate anywhere from galaxy to multi-galaxy levels of power. Then Ichigo goes on to activate Bankai, which destroys Yukio's dimension. This was the same dimension that multiple captains couldn't break if they wanted to, and among those captains were Kenpachi Zaraki, the same Kenpachi that was capable of causing cracks within the Garganta in space-time, and also stronger than Ciangrans, who at 30% was on par with Vastolode Ichigo, and with a 0 was able to shake the entirety of Hueco Mundo. Hueco Mundo being a dimension that consists of an infinite supply of Rishi matter, which would mean that this feat is comparable to Goku shaking the infinite void. So how strong would Fullbring Bankai Ichigo be from an inverse perspective? I think one of the main ways to view this is to look at his Bankai chains. The size of the Bankai chains gives us a clear baseline on how strong this Ichigo is. In his Fullbring Shikai, we see that the chains are similar in length to his previous Bankai. This shows how the Shinigami succeeded in getting Ichigo as powerful as he can in that tier of power. But in Fullbring Bankai, we see that the chains are significantly longer and connect to the white clad on his wrist. The length is not as long as Dangai Ichigo, but is similar to how true Bankai Ichigo has the chain connecting from the end of his sword to the upper white half of his sword. I think this demonstrates that Fullbring Ichigo is closer to the Dangai levels of power and transcendence. Arguments can be made as to whether or not he's as strong as Dangai Ichigo, but I do think that he's in the ballpark tier of power, but weaker than Dangai Ichigo. Genjo activates Bankai and demonstrates that along with his human Shinigami and Fullbring powers, he also has the power of a hollow similar to Ichigo. Even though for the most part Genjo did get dominated in the fight, you could say he is low end relative to Fullbring Bankai Ichigo. Genjo is a man that was corrupted by deception. This deception caused him pain and confusion along with thirst for revenge. But his revenge was aimed at the wrong people. That is why Genjo told Ichigo about the Shinigami badge, because he thought Ichigo would negotiate with him. But Ichigo understood that there wasn't malice intent behind Ukitake giving him the badge, and that is one of Ichigo's greatest attributes. He's able to analyze and understand the deeper motives of other characters well, and he did that for Genjo. Ichigo, being a fellow substitute Shinigami, was the only one who could understand and save Genjo by a mercy kill in the same way Genjo saved the other Fullbringers, ultimately giving him peace and a life that would have been continuously filled with rage. That is why Ichigo didn't scold Genjo or tell him he was wrong. He understood Genjo from his perspective, but couldn't support him. He understood that Genjo was a man corrupted by deception. So that covers all the feats within the Lost Agent arc, and now I'm going to show you guys why Genjo is so criminally underrated in terms of strength. After the TLA arc, Genjo goes on to train with Kukaku and Ganju to further hone his powers. It's not until Camp Your Own World that we see the results of his training. He does fight characters like the Friend Murders, Grimjaw, and other Arankars in base, but that's not important. During one of the battles, Hikone interrupts and goes up to him, saying that Tokinada told it to compare its strength to his, because he's a candidate to become the Soul King, and it's stated multiple times that Genjo is a candidate to become the Soul King, and at bare minimum, be an assistant that maintains the Bleach multiverse. Later in the novels, he goes on to fight Tokinada. Tokinada tried to block Genjo's attack using Zangetsu, but it shattered as soon as Genjo hit it because only Ichigo could use Zangetsu. Genjo goes on to state that even if Tokinada was using the real Zangetsu, he still would have won. Keep in mind, during this fight, Tokinada was using Yumichika Shikai ability to absorb the Ryatsu of Aura, who was the one capable of putting together the existence of Hikone, and was stated to have Fullbring powers on the level of Aizen's Kido. Genjo, due to being angry, activates his Bankai and hits Tokinada with Ryatsu that surpasses his own. Tokinada, after seeing his Bankai, states Genjo has come far in the mastery of his hollow powers, and that he's indeed a suitable candidate for the Soul King, and if someone with his power was to become the Soul King, they could destroy and reshape the world as they please. The reason why Tokinada was able to survive so many attacks is because he was able to use Hanato Shikai ability to absorb wounds and transfer it to an equal amount of Ryatsu, so keep that in mind. Due to being enraged and filled with a mix of emotions, Genjo activated an attack that rivals Ichigo's most strongest Getsuga Tensho. Obviously, the strongest Getsuga Tensho that Ichigo has fired was against the Soul King absorbed U-Haul in the final battle. This attack was able to completely one-shot U-Haul Bach, and we all know how powerful U-Haul Bach is. Lastly, Genjo is one of the characters who was stated to be able to put up a decent fight against Hikone, who is one of the strongest beings in the verse. In order to put into perspective how strong this being is, I'm just gonna list off some of her feats. After activating its Resurrection, Hikone had traits that undoubtedly made it the Soul King candidate in both Ryatsu quantity and particularity. Hikone is completely beyond characters like Shansui, Tokinada, Byakuya, Yoruichi, etc., to the point where their fight feels like child's play. And Hikone, when moving from one point to another, makes it seem like time has stopped to those watching. For time to appear to stop, from an outside observer's perspective, an object would need to be moving at exactly the speed of light. That is for a baseline human. Light is around 75 to 300 million times faster than our conscious visual reaction time. Now, if we compare this feat with characters that have faster than light perception, then at bare minimum, Hikone must be moving at 75 to 300 million C, unless I'm viewing this wrong, let me know. Regardless, as you can see, this character is a god tier in the verse, and Genjo was scaled to this character, making him one of the strongest characters in Bleach. You might be wondering how Genjo achieving this level of power is even possible. You must understand that Genjo is a hybrid being like Ichigo Kurosaki, which means his potential potential is almost infinitely higher than a character with just one race. Just like how Ichigo was able to achieve transcendent levels of power with just 3 months of training, it would be perfectly consistent for Genjo to achieve this level of power within a year of proper training. So with all the feats I've mentioned, Genjo will quite comfortably scale from low to low complex multiversal and hundreds of millions to even billions of times faster than light. With that being said, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video around. I'm out.